Hello, and welcome to Week 8, Option 1 exercise for the online class of Archaeology's Dirty Little Secrets. I'm doing another screencast because I enjoyed making the first one so much last week. Just to clarify, the professor has said that this option is is open to any aspect of the course, not just addressing who owns the past. So I chose to talk about the Nazca Lines, which have always fascinated me since I was a teenager. Nazca Lines are, of course, a huge topic, and I'm only going to discuss the basics of where they are, what they are, when they were made, who made them, how they were made, touch a little bit on why they were made, and of course I have to talk about the ancient alien aspect. Nazca Lines are in Peru, in South America, about 200 miles southeast of Lima, Peru. They're on a plain about 1 mile wide and 37 miles long. There's 800 straight lines, one of which is 9 miles long, 700 biomorphs, and 300 geometric shapes. Here are some of the biomorphs, which are the shapes of animals. I'm going to go through these very quickly. So you have an example. The lines were discovered in 1927 by Toribio Mahei Zespi. And then after commercial aircraft were available, the exploration and mapping of the lines took off, starting in 1940 with Paul Kossak. But then the lady of the lines, Maria Riesch, was a German archaeologist who came to Peru originally as a nanny, but then became associated with the lines throughout her whole life. She protected them from tourists who would examine them and damage them. The Nazca people were capable of making very intricate and detailed textiles, very beautiful pottery. They also had a very bizarre to our sensibilities habit of carrying around the heads of dead people with them. You can see this in this sculpture here, and here's an actual head. It's not known why they carried the heads around. Some people have suggested trophies of war, but that doesn't make complete sense because the headless bodies appear to be of the Nazca themselves, and the heads were replaced with jars. So it may be some type of ancestor worship or status symbol. Eventually, a changing climate made the Nazca have to relocate. Even though they were experts at irrigation, it was just too harsh an environment to live in. No aliens were required. Basically, you just have to move aside the oxidized or rusted rocks to expose the lighter, rocky sand that's underneath. For drawing the animals, they would probably just use grids drawn on a small scale and then stake out that grid on a larger scale. For drawing the straight lines that went on for miles, they could just use stakes and ropes. And stakes have actually been found by archaeologists. The climate of the desert preserves the lines. Why were the lines made? No one knows why the lines were made, and we may never know. The lines were made roughly from about 200 BC to 800 AD. It's difficult to know for sure. And as a non-literate culture, there are no records as to why they made the lines. There are, however, similar designs on their pottery. The geoglyphs were probably not viewed from the air. This was proposed in a book by Woodman, and he actually went so far as to construct a hot air balloon using materials that would have been available to the ancient Nazca. But there has been no evidence that the Nazca actually did this. It's not likely to be used as ancient calendars because even though some of the lines do line up with astronomical events such as solstice events and things like that, There are so many lines that by random chance you would expect a certain amount of alignments. The most interesting and probable theory, in my opinion, is based on the fact that modern people living nearby in the Andes Mountains have a tradition of holy walks between shrines, and so perhaps this is just scaled up by the Nazcas. The figures do seem to be designed as paths that could be walks, such as for sacred purposes, perhaps to pray for water, perhaps as rites of passage. We will never know. With the one thing we do know is that they weren't used as ancient alien airports, and even though von Däniken became famous for making this proposal, he was not the first to propose it. Here are my references. I hope you found something interesting in this podcast, and thank you for your time.